Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Well, hello and welcome to TFM and the crossover with the Nerd Party. That's right. We are in the 602 Club hosting the wonderful podcast, Aggressive Negotiations, and a friend. And who knows? We've actually kind of cleared out some space here in the bar because there may be some aggressive negotiations. Who knows? But I am just one of the hosts, Matthew Rushing, and I'm excited that he is with me as he is for all Star Wars podcasts in the 602 Club, and of course, over on Aggressive Negotiations that everybody should be listening to and checking out. The wonderful, incomparable John Mills.
Hello. I am here.
Well, hello.
Yes. Well, hello there. I'm pleased as punch that we're having this crossover with the 602 Club yet again, no matter how aggressive it might be, but not as happy on a sliding scale about our special guest that's joining us, Matt.
I could not be more excited that K2SO has decided to join us on this episode. I mean, we got him himself. He's here.
So that extra space you cleared was ceiling space. Okay, got it.
Exactly. He's so tall. He's so tall. And his interpreter, Darren Moser.
The man behind the droid at times.
Who knew K2 was so timid? You know, I mean, he doesn't come like that across on screen, but you know,
there's
in real life,
there's a couple backslaps I can point at that timid would not be quite the mood, but no.
And there's a fresh one if you mouth off again. And he's ready for John when he mouths off about this show that we're going to talk about, which is none other than Andor Season 2. It is finished, and we are finally going to get a chance to talk about it. Before we do, find us all over the place wherever you get your podcasts, whether you're listening to Aggressive Negotiations or the 602 Club. You should be listening to both. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you do get your podcasts, and make sure you're reviewing and rating the show wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, you can find both the shows on X Twitter. We've got the 602 Club at the 602 Club and Aggressive Negotiations at the Jedi Masters. You can find both of our networks as well on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter or X Twitter or whatever we want to call it. And, of course, you can find both of the networks online at either Track.fm or thenerdparty.com. And that's about it. We're going to dive into this episode because we have so much to talk about. And episodes, yes. I mean, we have 12 episodes in 4 arcs, which all take place during a year before the Battle of Yavin. But before we get there, guys, one of the things that was very interesting is that, you know, we're all big Star Wars nerds, and we embrace that wholeheartedly. We love it. And we knew that behind the scenes, this show was meant to be a 5-year show. So every year was meant to be a year. And so every season, we were going to be covering an entire year of Andor's life as he moved towards Rogue One. Well, they realized doing season 1, this show is taking forever for us to actually do because of the way that they were creating it. I would say it's comparable to kind of Game of Thrones style seasons where they've this massive production. And they realized there was just no way they were going to be able to complete 5 seasons of the show. I think one of them may have ended up dead. Who knows if it was going to be Tony Gilroy or Luna, you know, just from all the workload. So they decided we'll split this second season 12 episodes, so we'll have 4 3-part series. And I wanted to ask you guys, do you feel like that was the right decision instead of trying to prolong this into, 5 full seasons?
Well, I mean, I don't know if right decision I can approach that just because it is what we got. I will say I'd rather we had 12 episodes covering 4 years than here's season 2. We still got a couple years to go and we're canceled because we ran out of money. Like, I'd much rather they finish the story and do the handoff than be upset that it was pared down. Now, would I have enjoyed, 12 episode seasons times 4? Absolutely. I would have enjoyed that. I don't know how they would have fit K2 in 12 episodes of season 5, because he's apparently very hard to write about and to insert into the story. But yeah, so I am in a count my blessings kind of manner. That's just me.
That's fair enough. I think they could have managed to do it. I think that it's simply obstinate for the way any show is approached nowadays, where they're like, oh, well, we couldn't possibly do that. It's like, honestly, it drives me nuts. There's so many different ways you can break it down, and there's so many ways in history where people have put together really high quality shows in reasonable amounts of time. And, anyway, but without even going down that road, I mean, you could have done it any of a number of ways, but, to Darren's point, yeah, fine. They chose this way to do it. So, it's just the way that they chose to do it. So it's like, what are you going to do in that case? I mean, yeah, do I think that I have the managerial chops to have shown up and shown them how to do it, quote unquote? Probably not, because that's not an industry that I work in. However, I can also tell you whether I think that you constructed your playbook properly, even though I've never played football. I can look at the way that the game goes and say, hey, this season seems like maybe you could have approached it differently. But at the end of the day, they're the coaches, and they decided how they were going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it like this. One of the, I would say just about any fan of television's frustration these days is that these shows, it seems to take forever for them to get made. You think about the days when you could create 26 episodes of television in one season, and somehow you were able to do it. And, but at the same time, I know, when Andor, much more than any of the other Disney Plus shows, was made much more organically and much more
like a movie than a TV show.
Yeah, it's created like a movie. Yeah, and in that sense, again, I think really one of the most comparable shows on television in the last 10 years that you can kind of compare it to was the type of seasons that Game of Thrones was doing, where it has this expansive feel to it. They are truly trying to create a cinema quality episode every episode. And that is we know the show costs $600 million or something insanely crazy, just for 2 seasons. So, I think I'm right there with you, Darren, in the sense of look, if you came to the decision during season 1, yeah, there's no way we're going to be able to, or at least we don't feel like we could do this for another 4 years. And make this work. I think that this is a great way to do it, and I think especially since the Clone Wars helped prepare so many Star Wars fans for this idea of arced stories in a longer form storytelling. Those later seasons where you're getting these 3 or 4 part arcs that all, they subtly connect, but that's what we're doing here.
Takes me back to the DS9 days, if you want to talk about arcs.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
That was the first show I can kind of remember arcs resonating in that way.
I mean, yeah, what is it? Season 6, they opened with 6 episodes all in a row, until they take back Deep Space Nine. So, no, I think you're absolutely right. And this is it was a interesting experience, and they knew still they were going to lead right into Rogue One, and so figuring out then this idea then of what it is that you have to cover, or what is you are going to cover in that year, that's going to be the most important, was really, really interesting. So, the first arc that we get is 4 BBY, and it has 3 episodes in it. 1 year later, Sigrona Tima, and then Harvest. And the each episode arc actually takes place. I was listening to Gilroy talk about this, and he said it takes place around 3 to 4, maybe at most 5 days at a time. And so, but they stuck pretty close to the idea that it's about 3 days span in the year. And so I wanted to just ask you, we kicked this season off, we start off really with a bang, as Andor is stealing a Imperial ship, a TIE Avenger, which to me was a really surprising way to kind of start the season. I did not expect it to start with just this, kind of massive action set piece.
I mean, yeah, it starts off with that heist, and I think the heist is fine. I like the way they put it together, and that was interesting.
Yeah, you get kind of a, mini version of the Aldhani heist, but it's one man on an inside job, very kind of Mission Impossible-esque, and the money is on the screen, like the giant full built TIE Avenger, all of the backgrounds and areas, like you feel it. It's interesting. I kind of feel when I made a couple of notes for this season because there's so much that happens and it's hard to kind of find the chapter marks. So I look at what was the big standout event of each season, of each arc, because, it's like, oh, is it the wedding arc or is it the speech arc or things like that? And I think for me, for BBY, you kick off with the TIE fighter stealing, but it's really, I think this is the wedding arc, if I had to give it a name, because that's maybe not, again, it's not the biggest thing that happens, but you have, well, I'm talking myself in circles, but there's lots of things happening.
Yeah. No, I think, I do think, Darren, though, that there's,
because the rave dance at the end, that's the climax of this episode.
There are 3 main storylines that are happening, which is you've got this. You're going to have the storyline with Andor and stealing the shuttle, stealing the ship, the TIE Avenger, and he's going to end up on what we'll find out is Yavin before anybody else is there. Really, you're going to have the storyline on Mina Rao with Bix and Brasso. And hiding from the Imperial inspectors that have come looking for illegals. And then I think you rightly pointed out, one of the biggest parts of this story is the follow-up to, season 1 with the wedding between, Mon Mothma's daughter and basically a mob boss's son. And which she has done, of course, to secure funds for the rebellion. And so those are the 3 main stories, and then interwoven within that, you get the story about the ISB being brought in to what may or may not need to happen on Gorman, which the Empire wants this calcite that's in the stratus of the planet that it needs for the lenses of the Death Star. And so we get, Orson Krennic. And with those 4 main stories, they interweave all of those, throughout the season. But I do think that in some ways, Darren, what you said, it really does somehow still feel like it's the wedding arc, because that's such
it's really
a
hard
big...
to say, because as you described it is all interwoven, but maybe because it's like the last note, like when you're playing a concerto and the last note you hang on, like in my mind, that's Mon losing herself to the dance because she knows her friend is going to die, and like she's now in it. Like, I think, later we get an episode called Welcome to the Rebellion, but this is Welcome to the Rebellion for her.
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe that's a good idea, though. Outlining kind of the four stories. We opened up, with Cassian and stealing the TIE Avenger. And then, of course, he lands on this jungle moon with the most inept parts of the rebellion we've ever seen. And, his whole story really comes about needing to escape and try and get back to Mina Rao, not even knowing what's going on there. And so I what did you guys think of this storyline? Because whereas his story starts off with a bang, I'm not quite sure that this completely is the most successful arc of the season.
You've already been mad at me about how I felt about this opening arc. So, I mean, do we want to retread that here? Do we really want to spoil the lovely time that you and Darren are having so far?
I think I definitely feel like, because we're not in total disagreement about the fact that don't think
you slapped my hand quite well, sir. Quite well. I remember.
Which is great, because we were miles apart. But
it was quite the trick.
But I'll open it up then and say, look, I think that this is the worst part of the season, in the sense of, I don't think that I really truly understand why we need to kind of set up maybe how dysfunctional the rebellion is, and the type of people it could, people could gravitate towards it, could be completely inept. But these people are so inept, it's kind of really hard for me to watch. And so I would have appreciated much more if they hadn't been such idiots. Because it makes spending any time with them really difficult.
I agree on that front. I think that this arc is where I knew I was going to have my challenges with the season, because the worst thing you can do for me as an audience member is give me the enough opportunity to sit there and start nitpicking. So, like, you can take any movie. You could take the greatest 5-star film. You could take The Godfather. You could take Citizen Kane. You could take Jaws. You could take Shawshank Redemption, and you could start to pick it apart. But the trick is, you're so caught up in the way they're telling the story that you don't, right? So that's the whole thing. Is like, people love to, when you start nitpicking stuff, people are like, oh, well, you could do that with anything. Well, yeah, that's true. But the trick, it's a magic trick. Misdirect me. And I don't think this arc misdirected me enough to make me not want to pick it apart and say, there are 100 ways you could have condensed this, streamlined this, and told it quicker and gotten to the point a lot faster, and brought things together in such a way that it was much more focused. It feels very disjointed. I think that's my biggest problem with this, is I get the point. I get what they're trying to do, and they're setting everybody up, and it's a year, blah, 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 all that nonsense. But I was bored in this arc largely, and I was frustrated because of the fact that I was given the time to sit there and say, if you had taken these two parts and found a way to bring it together and streamline it, I would have stayed in it. And it suddenly felt like they were taking their time. And this gets back to that question you opened with, Matt. This first arc, I sat there and I said, oh, this comes across like something they didn't know how to condense. because we, like you said, we all, hold on. Oh, see, Matt's shaking his head. It's not a visual medium, folks. He starts off by saying, we kind of agree. And now that I'm going into my complaints about it, obviously I'm wrong. But I'll wrap it up by saying, yeah, each of these 3 episode arcs was supposed to be like a whole season. And what it comes across in this first 3 episodes for me, and at other points during the season, was that there were certain they weren't willing to streamline certain things because they wanted each arc to function in a certain way, because there were certain things they didn't want to let go of. And I just think that there were a lot of opportunities they missed as a result.
I mean, you could also say, and this, I don't begrudge this for the whole show, because you can definitely tell certain 3 episode chunks work much better than other 3 episode chunks. And so it's like they put themselves in this box, which I mean, you know me, I love my constraints, my rules. Okay, we got 3 episodes. This is how we're going to tell it. It's going to be like 24. This is the most important 5 days of the year, and everything's going to happen right now. Because we don't want to, and I prefer that too, like, and then a month later, title card, and then 6 weeks later, a title card. Like, I think that would have killed the pacing. But I think, yeah, there are some arcs where it doesn't fit as well. It sounds like what you're kind of saying, John, is they don't want to kill their darlings. Like, they have so many chess pieces that they need to get moved forward, and it's taking us a while to get the board moving, which, again, I'm a little more lenient on it, as I'm just kind of sitting here with popcorn for the ride, but I see your point.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't feel that sense for the overall arc. I only feel that sense for the one storyline, and that's definitely
let's pick that apart,
because
let's pick that apart. Because previously you were saying, like, really the only part of that arc that you don't like is you just don't like that the people are that inept. Is that
right?
Is that
exactly? Yeah, because one of the things that really helped, I think, was when I was rewatching the season and kind of in some ways realizing that these rebel cells are all a interesting microcosm of the stupid infighting that we've been seeing in the Senate, and with the Imperial officers jockeying for positions and power, right? And so that they're still susceptible to many of the same problems that we've seen, that are actually going to, kind of ruin the Empire in the end. I mean, as we get to the last arc, one of the main downfalls of the Empire actually becomes an Imperial officer's overreach because of her own selfishness and selfish desire, to have the credit for taking down Axis, right? So that's interesting to me. What I think I would have been more interested in is that if both of those cells on Yavin didn't just feel so stupid and actually felt more like they had a legitimate reason to kind of have to butt heads. But they truly just come off as like rent-a-cops that are, I mean, just awful. And so,
but just to pin you down, that's the only issue you have with the arc.
Yes, the rest of this, the storyline on Mino Rao, I think, is phenomenal. I think the storyline for the wedding is exceptional, and I think the storyline that we're setting up with the Empire is fascinating, because in some ways it's a wonderful mirror for what happened to Cassian's planet at the beginning. Like, he's from a planet that was strip mined and ended up being destroyed. And so knowing that the Empire is willing to do that again, this time to utilize it even more to their benefit is just, to me, really fascinating. So again, it's really just this one storyline, and to me, it's like I just need it to be rewritten a little bit, and I think it would come off better because, as Darren mentioned, and I'm the same way, I'm just enjoying being in the. To me, season 1 captured me, and I have said this to you before, but I love marinating in the world that they've created and just being there. So what they're doing is I don't need it to be sped up. I don't need it to get to the point faster because the point is actually to just be able to experience the lives of these people in day-to-day moments.
I'm not saying faster. I'm saying that getting things
But you kept
condensed.
saying that you want to get to the point quicker, and it's like, that's not the point of this show. That's not how they're doing it. That's not the
point of any story is what? What is the point of any story, any piece of entertainment that I'm watching?
Make money.
Well,
there you go, Darren. That's exactly it. Which you can't do on streaming, which is why we had to condense this to 2.
The search for more money, which will be coming to theaters in 2027.
I'm like Guy Fleegman from Galaxy Quest. I'm just happy to be here. So, I will say it was interesting watching I want to keep saying Harvest, like the Harvest Planet. I know it's Mina Rao, but in our other podcast, John and I have together, when we talk about movies, we just covered a lot of Tarantino pieces. And we recently did Inglourious Bastards, and I got many similarity vibes to the Imperials, wandering through the countryside on their little future tank, inspecting the homestead. Like, it was very, very, like, you could see the parallels they were drawing for sure in that with like occupied territory. And I think that's one of the benefits of Andor is it's always drawing parallels to history in general. And a lot of, but not to half step back onto Cassian's part, it kind of felt like they didn't know what to do with him in this arc, because it's like, okay, this awesome, get the tie, and then it's like, but we can't have him show up at the planet we haven't spent any time at, for a couple of days, because otherwise none of that happens. Like, it's almost as if it would be better to have all the Mina Rao stuff, and we don't see Cassian until like he gets it, and then he goes straight to the. I'm not saying we have to cut the whole Yavin part, but it's a pacing thing. It's how do you fit him in, and it very much feels like he is purposely stuck in a corner with the brakes on, because plot wise we can't have him show up too early, or we have no threat on our other planet, which isn't the strongest of writing. But
and that's exactly what I'm saying here. I think is if you can rewrite that, you can make it make more sense. You can make it feel better, and it would have even just, again, one of the ways you can do that is what you said, Darren. You could have started the season on Mina Rao and not really had Cassian show up until like the end of that first episode, and at the end of the
I get
first
why they
episode
didn't
is actually
do that.
Yeah. Oh, I do too. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, what you're saying is, I think, 100% correct, and it would have been more interesting then, because then you don't feel like that thing where it's like, oh, it feels like a plot convention, and that's always a frustration when you run into that. And two, it just doesn't help, I don't think, that the people he's stuck with just feel so dumb that you're also just frustrated watching them. So, yeah, I mean,
I think the first arc is also hindered. I don't know how you get around it, but it's also hindered by it's very much a groundwork arc. Like, it is introducing planets and cities and situations. It's the where have our characters been since we last saw them, unless you have the voiceover at the beginning of a Clone Wars episode, like previously on Andor, Bix Scalene was hiding from the Empire. It's, I want them to show us that, but that takes time.
Speaking of Mina Rao and the whole storyline there, a lot has been made of that storyline, especially with the scene between Bix and the Imperial officer who tries to rape her. And so what did you guys think of that story and specifically this incredibly hot topic, hot button? I mean, some fans absolutely hated it and thought this didn't belong in Star Wars ever and is the worst thing that's ever been seen in Star Wars, and others,
Yeah, but you could take that whole paragraph of it shouldn't be in Star Wars and apply it to almost anything. Fans will say almost anything that they hate about Star Wars. No one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans.
It's true.
The thing is, we've spent so much time on this first arc already.
I know, not to fast forward. I'm thinking the same thing. I'm looking at my list and I'm like, I want to talk about this other stuff too, but it's been like 30 minutes. So, it's people are going to feel about it the way they feel about it. I think pretty much anybody's reaction to it is just going to be what their reaction is. I think the ludicrous thing is trying to shame anybody out of feeling one way or the other about it. All I know is at the end of that, I was like, well, I just recently, one of my kids, has started watching Star Wars with me. We've been working through Clone Wars. We've watched Rebels together. We went to Revenge of the Sith in the movie theater and everything. And there's just no way I can sit down and watch this with my kid. That's just not old enough to be there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Okay. That doesn't mean that you don't have a right to put that in the story or anything like that. But it's just, this is a piece of Star Wars I can't share with her. Previous to that, I don't know that there's anything in the arc that would have really compelled a kid to watch it at all. The sense, especially from this first 3-episode arc, is one of the arguments that goes back and forth continually about Star Wars or any other piece of sci-fi or anything like that is, what audience is this for? Those sorts of things. I'm not coming down on either side about it, but this show out of the gate winds up feeling like that discussion that's been had about superhero movies at this point, where people feel that superhero movies should be a certain way, or they feel that it should be quote unquote broken and we have to see what we can break it down to and it's postmodern, blah, 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 blah. This feels very much like that Snyderverse argument where some people are going to come down hard on superheroes should be this. This is not the way superheroes should be. And then for people that it works for, they're going to say, yes, finally, we've got superhero movies that really bring that. I would simply offer, I didn't need this to know that the Empire is bad. And I understand that it personalizes it and it gives a motivation and an arc for things that happen later in the season. And it's supposed to add layers to how Cassian feels about certain things. But I didn't need it to know that the Empire was that bad. We're talking about a government that's building a moon-sized space station to eradicate entire planets at a time. I sort of am already there thinking, these are not the type of people I'm going to send Christmas cards to.
Yeah.
But does it work for somebody to be like, yeah, finally that's in Star? Okay. That's their opinion. I don't.
But how do I know if they're evil if I don't see them kill the babies? It's like, we know. But
why did I never get a shot of people on Alderaan looking up, screaming out in terror as their planet was incinerated?
All we heard was Ben Kenobi talking about a vague feeling. That's not enough.
So abstract. So abstract.
Yeah, I fall on the side that I thought that this was completely appropriate for the story. I think it works for the story, and I get what you're saying, John. Where like the whole question about Star Wars and what's it for? I think of what's come out in the recent past year about the idea of Lucas's own work on his Dark Times story, his Underworld series, and talking about how it was going to be much darker and sexier and all those kind of things than anything he had ever done in Star Wars before. And so, we have no idea what those scripts look like. But just the fact that that's the way that McCallum described them. Okay, that's really interesting to me. And so I also think the Clone Wars showed that there's a real dark side to Star Wars that we've seen play out in that show. There's a real dark side in Episode 3. So that movie is very dark. But one argument that I would say, to that whole scene is, there is something to be said for seeing the very visceral evil, the death of billions on a planet that you just watch destroy that you've never met or whatever. Yeah, that it's very ethereal, and we all get that it's bad, but seeing that this is the type of badness that happens all over the Empire is, I think, really impactful. And I think it makes the evil of the Empire much more personal to all of us in that sense. And so therefore, I think it's completely legitimate and valid to be seen. And it works specifically for this story that they're telling, which is all about that evil of the Empire, which, completely chimes in with what they're about to do to Gorman. So yeah.
I will say there's also in this arc, to kind of wrap it up, there's also poignant deaths in each arc. And I'd say the two that I think of in this one is blanking on name, but his buddy from Ferrix. Like
Brasso. Yeah.
Like that was again, you want to imagine Brasso like being on Yavin, and part of the cause is like, nope, that's as far as he went.
Yeah.
And then the other I think of is, it's off screen and it's highly implied, but the Tay coma.
With Tay. Yeah.
And again, Andor, and when I say Andor, I mean the series as opposed to Cassian. It doesn't waste deaths of main characters. Like they're pushing our other characters forward in different ways. So on the death meter, we got 2. I mean, there's been more dead, but those are the 2 I think that stand out the most in this arc.
Yeah, I kind of love that he became Fredo. To use the Godfather reference, I thought that was great. And yeah, I mean the whole wedding arc was just, I think, phenomenal, and in that sense, I love what it does for Mon Mothma, because it's like, there's no going back for her at this point, right? The moment that she knows that her friend has been killed, like, she's in it completely. There's no returning for her, which is why I thought, the end with that dance where she just is like, she kind of breaks with the pressure that she's been under for the last, 15 years of the Empire, or 14 years of the Empire, and being in the Senate, and now it's just like it became too much. And so she has this one moment where people aren't going to look at her too weird if she just like completely loses it. And then she has to pull herself back together for the rest of the season and the rest of these years. And I just thought that was great. So, okay. Well, like you guys mentioned, we've talked a lot about Arc 1, and we got Arc 2 with 3BBY. And we really kind of continue the story, especially, with Gorman, really comes to a head, the storyline with the Empire, and kind of making something of the Cyril arc, with him and Drea, and a little bit of a closing in, I think, on even Luthen, right? And some of his machinations kind of backfiring. So, where were you guys with 3BBY?
Yeah, I feel it's almost easier to talk about the arcs of character in each season versus like what happened in the first episode versus the third episode, because it's all together. Like you could almost watch it as a movie. They're really four movies.
Exactly.
And yeah, I mean, I loved the bits of Saw we got. That I think is like all the parts at Saw's partisan hangout was what I think we wanted from that first arc of like, oh, this is a different rebel group and they're functioning differently and their leaders going off the deep end. And I know we'll get there, but for me, this arc culminates with the art gallery scene where they're trying to get the listening device out and Krennic's there
so good.
And, chewing the scenery like he always does. But we didn't talk about Cyril and Deidre very much, although we got some great bits in the first movie. I'll say movie, but of with his mom and all of that. And I think the thing that I took away the most from 3BBY was, here are these actors playing these characters and they get to jump time. And I know in some interviews they talked about that. Like that's a very rare thing. People don't usually get to revisit characters and act as if a lot of time and a lot of events have happened. It's usually like, oh, it's tomorrow. So that was fun to watch all of the way they portrayed that. And yeah, like you said, like Luthen's starting to unravel a bit and, Saw is starting to go off the deep end. But this one, you also really see Clea like step into her own. Like she is really taking the reins of Luthen's cell, I guess we'll call it. But what do you think of this arc, John?
It's fine.
Only way to go up from arc 1. So
yeah, it's fine. I still, I wasn't nuts for it. I mean, I'll never throw shade toward Forrest Whitaker as Saw Gerrera. Love him in the role. Think he's great. Often wished I'd had more of him because he was truly interesting. It's not like I hate the arc, but it didn't light me on fire. It's fine. That's basically how I felt about it.
Yeah, I really enjoy this arc specifically because, John, you and I talked a lot about what in the world, when we did our watch through all the episodes, like the Cyril thing. This has got to go somewhere, right? And to actually see them make something of that, and what was most interesting, I think, was to watch him and Deirdre had probably the weirdest relationship ever on screen in Star Wars, and partially just her. I mean, she's truly kind of psychopathic. Forgive me for forgetting the actress's name, but she talked about this idea of she studied psychopaths and female psychopaths. She said specifically, most often don't actually do their own murders or terrible things. They actually weave other people into their web that do it for them. And so it was fascinating to watch her kind of basically do that with Cyril. So they have the world's most twisted relationship that you've ever seen, right? Like he's getting everything that he wants from her, but at the same time, she's using him the whole time, And so I thought I really appreciated that we really made something of that character, because I think it helps even the season 1 rewatch. And like you were mentioning, Darren, and John, like it's fascinating to kind of see, Saw Gerrera, who we kind of see his own descent, in many ways. There's this weird mirroring that happens between him and Luthen, as in throughout this series, they're both kind of going to descend into their worst angels of their nature, right? Which is going to end up destroying them in the end, right? Saul will live on into Rogue One, but Luthen will meet his end by the series. And part of that is because he can't change, and neither can Saul.
But he knew that from the beginning. I mean, one of the greatest speeches from season 1 was Luthen's, I'm paraphrasing slightly because I don't remember it exactly, but it's basically, I work towards a sunrise I know I'll never see, and and in a way, like, we all knew that. Like, we all knew Luthen was not going to live past this season. It would betray his character to be like, okay, Luthen, yay, come hunker down. You're going to make it to Hoth. It's like, why? He barely would survive on Yavin. And I like how they kind of get into that, where it's like he's building and sacrificing, but even within the rebellion, there's no place for him outside of his cell on Coruscant.
Well, because in some ways, this whole arc really feels like a Le Carre story. And in that, he's the spy master who, he has to be in control of everything. So, no, I completely agree with you, Darren. And lastly, just for this arc, one of the big things that happens is, Bix has been struggling, obviously, with her trauma because of Dr. Gorst. And we get Andor helping her find a way to get her revenge. And get her revenge she does. So how did you feel about that whole idea of allowing her to basically destroy her demons, literally?
I mean, there's I can understand either way. I mean, the thing is, I hesitate to wade into it because I know that my takes are all wrong with this show, but I'll just venture gingerly out there and
we'll push you back if we need to, John. Don't worry.
No, I'm not sure the message they're trying to send at that point is largely where I go, because there's. It goes back to the whole argument of like, well, Anakin was hurt and wronged with the Tusken Raiders and what they did to his mom. So are we making an argument that his slaughter of the tribe was correct because they were all guilty of it, right? But at the same time, I know it's a very distinctly personal sort of thing. And are they trying to get her to a point where it's like she can close that chapter and move on now? Like, I'm just not sure what they were trying to say.
That's an interesting point, though, John, because without the Force and talking about the Force and the light side and the dark side, which, is said every 5 minutes in normal Star Wars, that's true. You have her, killing the source of her, terror, and never is it like, oh, Bix, why did you do that? You're going down the dark side. Like, no, there's none of that. Like that doesn't even cross anybody's minds. It did kind of feel like eating your cake and having it too, or whatever that saying is. But where, yes, we want to show the impact of her sleepless nights and her trauma and her struggle and all of that. But we also want to be able to tie off that arc. She kills him. And now we're never going to have to talk about that again. It doesn't become a through line really past this point.
Yeah, I mean, I would say at least the way that I read this is that, Andor comes to confront Luthen, and he is furious about him messing with Bix in Bix's state. Right. And I read this as one of those things where Luthen is doing what he needs to do to keep Andor and Bix in the game. And he needs Bix fixed. He needs Bix well for Andor to keep going.
Right. But
therefore, they get their revenge on Dr. Gorst I think that's, the question you raise of the morality of it is excellent, because that is a question that we should ask. And, what we've seen that this person has done, and what we learn, I think that makes this kind of interesting. They don't necessarily even know, but the Empire wants to expand this person's research so that they could basically use this torture on anyone and everyone. And so, when we're talking about the morality of it, yeah, they killed this guy, but he's about to inflict this on who knows how many more beings in the galaxy. And so by taking him out,
the greater good argument, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So again, I think that's the kind of the beauty of the show, right? The whole point is to make that discussion of what you referenced it, Darren, is the whole speech that Luthen gives. I am forced to use the tools of my enemy. And we see that over and over again of that happening, right? I mean, one of the most blatant examples of that is the repurposing of K2SO, literally a tool of the enemy, and so, yeah, he's funny and everything, but, that's who he was. And so I find that to be one of the beauties of the show, is that it doesn't make these questions easy, and it makes you as an audience have to wrestle with them, right? And
it would be nice to see the characters wrestle with them from time to time, outside of Luthen giving a speech in the previous season.
But I think that is happening all of the time with these characters. I mean, Luthen himself is wrestling with. Even Clea is wrestling with this. We see that in her backstory. We see Andor wrestling with this. We obviously see Bix wrestling with it, because she's not only dealing with the torture that she suffered, but she's also dealing with having to defend herself and take a life, and what that means for her. And we see Cinta dealing with that in all that she's been called to do, in her relationship with Vel, and the fact that she didn't make that more
very
of a priority.
Briefly, just in time for Vel to die in a very clever.
Well, Cinta to die.
So whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
oh no, I mix up Vel and Cinta. You're right. All of my opinions invalid.
We knew what you meant, and she's definitely in the key person that died this arc. Just so
yes, key person that died this arc. Sure, yes, absolutely. But again, the thing is, this is one of the things that makes it tough. Is I know that I'm apostate among certain circles of Star Wars fans for not being in love with every decision that this show made. But if I go back to that, I'm like, okay, well, this feels like another thing where if it had been given the proper amount of time for these two characters to develop further on screen, instead of saying, hey, remember that person? Yeah, we're going to kill her now. And that's going to make this one sad that you care about too. And it's like, oh, okay, well, we'll throw that one in there too. Cool. And that is, I think, just a product of the fact that they were like, okay, well, we were going to spend 4 years telling all of this. So, let's make it all happen, and we'll get there.
Yeah. And
that's true. I think that story does suffer the most from the compression of a 12 episode year into a 3 episode. Here you go.
Yeah, I mean, I think the beauty to me of this show is that it works because the actors sell it. And if it doesn't work for you, okay, I'm sorry it didn't work for you. So the next to last arc of the show, the penultimate arc, to BBY, is, I mean, I guess it could arguably be where the most action kind of happens in the season, as everything that's been building on Gorman comes to a head. We get a Les Mis moment on Gorman, basically, and we have the Javert and Jean Valjean moment. Of course, one doesn't know who the other is, and so yeah, I'm really interested to just hear about what you guys think about this one, especially since this. I mean, one might even argue that this is almost kind of the culmination of the season, and the next arc is almost like a coda that just leads us into Rogue One.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, episode 8 and 9 are, like, in my opinion, one of the best 2 episodes of this season, with the Gorman massacre and then and it's like, oh my gosh, that's like that's got to be the high point. And then you have Mothma's speech and Extraction, which is just even like they just keep the train running. They had an event out here in Hollywood. I kind of feel for these actors, because for like a month and a half they've been on the Andor train, and they've got to be exhausted because they are just doing interview after interview after. I mean, they were doing a fan event, and then like 2 days later they were in Japan for Celebration. So, but they had an event, and we got to watch Welcome to the Rebellion, episode 9, you know, in a fairly large screen kind of theater setup. And man, you know how it's ending, but you're holding on to the armrests of your chair because they're just trying to get out of the Senate. The noose is closing. You know, Mothma's given her amazing speech. So yeah, I think many people would think this is the high water mark of the season. And you even get a bit of a respite at the very beginning where Bix and Cassian, it's been a year. So they've lived on Yavin for a year. They've been together. They're not on Coruscant. And so it's like, oh, things are kind of getting a little better. The rebellion's a little more cohesive. But because it's always, I have to wrap my head around the timing a bit, because it's slightly odd in how they do it, where they say 2 BBY, but this is really within that year at some point, because next week it's right at the end. It's not a year before the Battle of Yavin. It's like a week before. So this is roughly-ish a year and a half out from Yavin, or the battle. But revisiting, deconstructing the massacre scene, Cyril's death, key death. I know I got to point him out, but there's so much in these 3 episodes, especially 8 and 9, which I never thought I'd say. Episode 8 and 9 were the best part of Star Wars, but
yeah.
They found it. They got me. And, not even talking about the ending. I mean, I feel like I'm doing all the talking, but the very ending, we get introduced to K2, to KX units, from sitting down with Cyril to just causing the Gorman massacre as they are unleashed on the populace. And they're terrifying. They are, I mean, when I walk around with K2SO, the puppet, he's very intimidating. Like, he's 7'2". He's full size. He's huge. And, when I'm walking in a con, I don't know why people get out of the way. I don't know why. Maybe it's because they're afraid he's going to pick him up like a stormtrooper and chuck him over a railing. But for me, it was obviously, my favorite character. I was gushing over seeing him. Although it did give me slight pause, because as cool as it was seeing the KX units, like, they are committing atrocities. Like, it is, they are brutally killing people, like, with body slams. So, to not to sidebar, but after episode 8, the Gorman massacre, I'm part of the 501st Legion, and we do, stormtroopers and dressing up and all that stuff. And I have a set of stormtrooper armor. And I had a interesting sentiment after the episode where it gave me pause about wearing my stormtrooper armor again. Because of
it's really interesting.
of the scene. And I'm not saying, like, I'm never going to wear it. I'm not saying I went to that far. But there was a time, and there's some online communities of Legion members, and other people were sharing they had that same sentiment. Not everybody. It's not like 100% of Legion, threw their armor in the trash. But a lot of us had discussions of, wow, like, it, we say we're bad guys doing good, but
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's drawing the parallel of like people who dress up in like Nazi paraphernalia or anything, or like it started to pull back the curtain a little bit of like, oh, these are really bad people. And I think, like I said, it was a pause, and you can still kind of focus on, Star Wars Episode 4 and always missing the mark and knocking your head on the door, and like, the comical stormtrooper that we're more used to. But it was just interesting that other people who have the costume had similar interactions. So yeah, this was a whirlwind 3 episode. What about you, John? Did you feel this was a high water mark for at least for the parts of the series?
Yeah, this is the part where I got invested in the season. It was definitely in terms of storytelling, I got more interested in what was going on. And I thought that it was, pretty well put together. The Cyril resolution was interesting, with the way that he buys it. And, that sort of thing about how, he had been obsessing about this thing for years and regarded, Cassian as the architect of all his woe, and neither of them actually knew each other. That's a statement in and of itself. But, and of course, who doesn't love the Mon Mothma speech and getting her out of there, right? So, obviously that's going to be a payoff. And that's the sort of thing where, this arc feels more organically a part of what people signed up for when they heard about an Andor show.
I could see that.
And
just think of the first 7 episodes as a slow burn. And because you have to build, you can't just start with the Gorman massacre. Like, it would not be nearly as good.
Right. It wouldn't be as effective if you did, regardless of the bumps getting up there, it at least starts to come together at this point. And, like I said, like the way that they have him extract her from Coruscant is well done. Some of it gets to what I don't care for in some of the production design, but that's just sort of like descending into those particulars. But, just the way that it plays out, it's well put together.
Well, and we get notable death of her driver. And it's interesting because I've heard some people say, oh, maybe he had heard the speech and he was kind of like maybe starting to turn and realize, but at that point it's like, no, sorry, you are in the box of the ISB plant and you cannot get out. Like even if you changed your mind, he's going to shoot you. And we get the awesome, gif of Mon Mothma's reaction to him getting shot in front of her. But back to Cassian for a second, because Matt, I wanted your thoughts on, we talk about his death and the "Who are you?" I mean, it's the episode title, but I almost feel like we've moved past. This was my view. Like, we've moved past the whole cat and mouse. Like, he doesn't talk about Cassian at all. He's on the ISB train. He's on his woman train. Like, that's the new Cyril. Like, he doesn't really care about
on
Cassian.
His woman train.
Well, you know what I mean? Whatever you're going to call that relationship. But I think that's way more interesting. His interactions with Deidre, with choking her, with he's like losing his mind. And so it almost felt like, and then for one moment, he was season 1 Cyril again when he sees Andor and he loses it. But like, only for that moment, I feel like that's actually his care. But that was how I kind of viewed it. Did you see it the same way? Did Cyril kind of evolve into ISB Cyril, or was he always looking for, oh, this is helping advance my, like, Deidre is constantly looking for Axis, no matter what. But I felt like Cyril at least wasn't shown constantly looking for Andor, not like season 1.
Right. No, I think
You can say 100% right. I won't hold it against you.
No. I think for me, the thing that happens in that moment is that there's a lot of things that kind of quickly spiral for Cyril. One, he's an idealist, right? In the sense of like he truly kind of believes in this empire. He believes in this idea that he's helping law and order. He's helping the galaxy, and at the same time, right? It's also the thing that he's using to help himself, right? And the moment that happens there is that he loses it all. The woman that he is in love with, he realizes he's been used the entire time, and he's been used to destroy these people. And what he finds is that he's being used for an atrocity in this way, right? And I think
you could tell he was connecting with him. He was connecting with the Gormans.
Exactly.
Like he was still getting information,
Exactly.
But there's little hints of like flirtation and because he has always seen himself as a man of the people,
Yes.
even in his corporate days.
Yeah.
But when they're both, Deidre and Sierra, that is such an interesting, tragic story because, when Deidre's all like, it's going to be perfect, sir. We're going to get to go back to Coruscant and live the life we want. And you're just like, what planet? Oh, I know what planet, but what planet are you living on right now? Because you are so out of touch. Both of you, they are not communicating. They don't know each other's love language. They need counseling so bad, but.
Well, and I mean, the point of this is really interesting, and I'm glad you brought it up, Darren, because I think it really does bring something interesting to light. We really truly kind of see the way in which the way that's the parenting of somebody can have a massive impact on who they are, right? Cyril is obviously looking for acceptance in all the wrong places because he has this terrible mother,
Alderaan,
right? Who is awful, and is nothing but critical, and yet he is her entire life somehow, right? Deidre's grown up in a kindercare. Who knows exactly how all the math works there? I like to think that she was actually in a Republic facility, which turned into an Imperial facility.
That's what I see. And then she just, Empire's been forever.
Right.
I don't get people.
And then the fascinating thing is like you have this Andor character, right, who is rescued from a planet before it's destroyed, grows up with a loving father and mother, and who he turns out to be is very different than these other two characters. And so in many ways, they're strange mirrors of one another. That moment that like Cyril has lost everything. And so instead of them doing this kind of like cliched moment of a redemption arc for him, he snaps the moment he sees Andor, and of course it makes sense for him to snap when he sees Andor, because he then can put all of his rage and blame on Andor as if it's his fault, right? And then, the moment that he then realizes that Andor doesn't even know who he is, it's like, it's the greatest moment of injustice in his life, right? And so, I think that's an incredible moment. I mean, I would posit that this arc is one of the greatest things that Star Wars has ever done for me. I mean, just personally, it is the way in which the tension's built is so perfect, and again, it feels so Les Mis in that sense, and to watch the Empire just destroy this planet, and what's crazy about that, right, is that they're actually destroying this planet because they need, quote unquote, need something from this planet, and then we're going to watch them in A New Hope destroy a planet just because they can. They don't need anything from Alderaan. It's just because they can to send a message. And it's like the ratcheting up of the terror of the Empire here, I think, is just incredible. And then, like you mentioned, Darren, that it leading into Mon Mothma giving that speech of all speeches. We thought Luthen's speech was the end all be all of Andor. Well, no, Mon Mothma was like, hold my beer.
There's so many speeches in this whole show.
Yeah, she's like, hold my Chandrillan drink here with the fizzy thing in it, because I got this. And yeah, the exit there is pretty phenomenal. So we have the last arc, and really the last arc boils down to the fact of Luthen getting the information from Lonnie about the Death Star, because he's tapped into Deidre's comms channel, which apparently she was also put on a signal chat that she shouldn't have been on. And then she just stayed there, but then she didn't realize that she had been piggybacked on. And Lonnie is the most unsung hero of the rebellion ever, because without him, this show doesn't happen. And so it really becomes about getting that information then to Yavin, with, Luthen dying and Clea having to finish the job. We learn about her, and then of course it's all about leading right into Rogue One. And so final arc, what did you guys think?
I mean, I know you said, and I kind of agreed that, oh man, after last chapter, this is like a coda, but geez, that first episode, that is in that episode, so much happens. Like, you have the confrontation between Deidre and Luthen. You have the whole break-in at the hospital, which is a huge sequence. You have, Luthen killing Lonnie, all sort. You have the fact that Cassian isn't even in this episode. Like, it's all about, and you get the flashback of Luthen and Kayla and their history and story, blowing up things on Naboo. Like, that episode feels like we only got 3 episodes left. Okay, well, let's put all this in. Like, they're going to use every minute they have, because it's a race towards the finish line. And then you're watching Deidre like crumple under Krennic, like the finger on the forehead scene. You get K2's glorious hallway scene, which is one of my favorites of the entire Star Wars saga, as he clears away and uses Imperial officers as riot shields. And then it leads to the Jedha Kyber Urso. Not the best title of an episode, gonna admit, but it's like, it's a temp title. We'll think of something better. And then we never did. True. But, that one, I'd say definitely that one is the coda. It's from the slow motion walking of Cassian to, him wearing the same jacket he's going to wear on the first scene of Rogue One that we see him in. Like, that is hours, if not a day, before Rogue One. Like, we are right there as we're landing I'd say plane, but we're landing the shuttle. So yeah, it's a coda, but man, you're buckling up the whole time. But I don't know. What did you think, John? Did this feel like a coda 3-part? Did it feel too jammed? Like, we have so much to do because our backs are against this wall of Rogue One that we have to dock at?
Yeah, I thought the final arc was good. I felt one of the best parts of it was I finally got the Krennic that I thought would have worked better and probably originally existed in Rogue One, because we all know that was constructed very differently, and this Krennic comes across like the Krennic that was originally there, that got neutered a little bit in the final cut of Rogue One, where it was like there was some missing menace to him, and it was nice to have the menace added so that, obviously it's constructed so that when you see Rogue One, he has a little bit more bite to his character. So they obviously use this opportunity to, address that. And it made him infinitely more interesting. Obviously, who doesn't love seeing a backstory on a character like Luthen? I found, intentionally or not, that the fact that if you look at the what's referred to as the European cut of Highlander, Clea's origin story of how she meets up with Luthen is basically the same, not one-to-one, but virtually the same as how Rachel and the Highlander get to work together, and she grows up with him from childhood. Which, if they did that intentionally, then kudos, because I picked up on it. If they did it unintentionally, then we obviously all watched the same movies growing up. So either way, it works. But I liked the way the final arc came together. I wasn't necessarily crazy about specifically how it ended. The specific sequence of events, and I think probably what I was reacting to was after a certain time marker in the last episode, I said, okay, I know everything that's coming up here because they have to put this character in this shot and this character in this type of shot. And it just, it fell along those lines, and that's not a negative or a positive. It's simply, that's the constriction that they were in. Right. And, so, again, but it's the box you're in, to borrow a phrase from you. And, so the final arc works well. And I think from my perspective, it works well specifically because Krennic I think he really gets to shine in this arc. He finally became that really up close and personal bad guy that I wanted to see.
It's interesting. I mean, we're not diving into Rogue One because we didn't got time for that. But if we had this level of Krennic in Rogue One, I think you could have gone without Tarkin. You wouldn't need another big bad shadow, because Krennic is terrifying. Like him, his influence on the bureaucracy, he has a ton of power, but yet we still get subtle moments like with him and was it Gorst? That's not the name.
Partagaz.
Yes. I was gonna say it's got a big long name, and I was trying to remember. But yeah, him and Partagaz, like their scene. Oh my gosh, like where they kind of drop the facade for a moment, and they're talking using first names of like, "Hey, hope we make it through. What's gonna happen?" Because they both feel like the end is near. And I mean, to even Partagaz's death, which is such a subtle death, but is shot amazingly.
I think to me, as you guys were talking about Krennic, I was just kind of thinking about, him specifically as the character, and he has throughout this whole season, right? He's come off as this incredibly arrogant and powerful character, right? And part of that is because he's behind the scenes on the most secretive, top secret thing that the Empire has been working on for who knows how many years. We actually don't know quite how many years, but it's been a long time. Partagaz even mentions the fact that we've been able to keep this secret for this long is amazing. This is the most off the books, super top secret thing that's ever happened in the history of the galaxy. And the fact that we've, made it last this long is amazing. But I think what actually is amazing is that, yes, he can come off like this in this episode, but by the time we reach Rogue One, the cat's out of the bag. And as Qui-Gon said, there's always a bigger fish. So yeah, Krennic looks like the big guy here, but the next guy on the totem pole that's only surpassed by Vader and the Emperor is Tarkin, right? And so it's that thing that I think actually they built in kind of perfectly to this season to help explain why Krennic doesn't get to be the character he is here, because we always thought Deidre was great too, but like she's taken down every peg because she's thrown an Arcana by the end of this. Because she's the one who takes the biggest fall. Partagast, realizes that the rebellion is inevitable and that it basically the Empire's on its last legs, even though it doesn't know it. And he's like, yeah, I'm done with this. I'd rather commit suicide than live through whatever punishment they're going to dole out. And then, obviously the rest of this whole arc is really just about setting up Rogue One, right? To get us to the point where we're going to get there. I found the most interesting part about this is that that 2 BBY, 1 BBY are the first introductions that we get of at all of spirituality and the Force through the Force healer, which I loved and I thought were really great additions because then this episode kind of what ends Andor kind of doing the montage walk, right, is Bail Organa telling him, may the Force be with you. And in these last 2 years, it's like there's been this slow progression of the Force kind of finding its way back into the story, which, of course, Rogue One, it's going to be there because of Jyn and her parents, especially her mother, with the Kyber crystal and her belief in the Force in some ways. And then, of course, it bursts back onto the scene when Luke comes on the stage, right? And so I kind of love the way in which Gilroy was able to kind of work that back into the Star Wars saga and show that it's as the rebellion is growing, so is this idea of the Force that has been squelched out by the Empire, or at least they thought they had squelched it out, right? But it can't help but still exist. And so I really love that. And this arc I thought was like, to me, the most moving thing is watching the backstory of Luthen and Clea. And what's interesting is Clea is very much a mirror. We don't realize this until that episode, but she's a mirror for Andor, right? Andor gets parents who love him, raise him well. Clea gets Luthen, who raises him like a revolutionary from the moment that he has her.
But this arc, we also see that she's kind of also the string puller. Like, yeah, he's kind of, we've always thought he's the boss of boss, but she kind of is in a lot of ways.
They feed off each other in some ways. Yeah. I agree. So,
I wanted to ask John, you're talking about the Force healer, and, I think one of the big things for Andor is everyone is like, hey, look, Star Wars without lightsabers and Jedi and Force, like, it can be done and it's still good. Did you miss those aspects, John, or did you wish that there had been more Force religion of Star Wars, or was it okay to take a break from that?
No, I mean, obviously, so long as the story's well told, who cares? It's it is what it is. And it doesn't matter whether a character is constantly bringing it up. We're supposed to be in an era where people are more cynical about those sorts of things. So I understand why there wouldn't be, emphasis on it. It makes sense for these characters. They're not people who have lived with Jedi around them for their whole lives. They're not people who have necessarily seen that. We meet Han Solo in A New Hope, and he's skeptical that the Force even exists. And so, it's fitting for the time period, as it were, for people not to be necessarily, all in on the Force. I mean, it's one of those things where you can also debate it out because, Dodonna says in A New Hope, then get to your ships and may the Force be with you. So obviously there is some sort of spiritual element strongly at play with, at least the older generation that is populating the base because they know
you're older
Jedi
than me,
and stuff
John.
like
I
that.
had no idea.
Right.
You never brought
Right?
that up.
Exactly.
Ever.
Yeah, no.
In all of our hundreds of episodes.
I was talking about Donna. I wasn't talking about myself. But I'm saying like it creates it creates an interesting thing because everybody's cynical, and then we're going to jump right into Rogue One and A New Hope, where you get exposed to people who are more attuned to it. So it's it doesn't ultimately to me matter. Again, so long as the story is well told and all of those sorts of things, I'll plug into it. I can say that I have spoken with somebody directly, a guy that I work with. I respect him very much, and he couldn't get into the show because in his perspective, he doesn't want to watch Star Wars without lightsabers and Jedi, because to him, that's what Star Wars is. And
that's
I was
nice
talking
that does exist. You can watch Star Wars with Jedi and lightsabers. It is out there. It didn't get erased when Andor aired.
And he wasn't claiming that it did. He's just saying that like he's not going to plug into Andor, and because from his perspective, and it's everybody's got their different opinions and everything. But while I was talking about it with him, I asked him to expound on it, and he's like, "Well, I can get non-Force stuff with these sorts of things in other shows." He's like, if I'm coming to Star Wars, I'm there because I want that thing. It's like I go to Burger King for burgers, and I go to, although I'm not advertising for Burger King. I go to X franchise for whatever.
Although if Burger King wants to, support our show,
right,
please do.
There you go. And I go to Blaze Pizza because I want pizza, and I don't mix the two. And so it was his perspective that like I go to Star Wars for those things because I can get these things elsewhere. And so he didn't see a specific benefit to that. And, of course I was like, okay, I understand what he's saying. And I just said to him, I was like, well, let me know if you ever come back to it. But he stalled out at like the second or third episode because he was like, once he saw that he wasn't going to get that, it wasn't of interest to him. And so it's like, I think that, there's going to always be a contingent that's like, well, why would I watch it without that? I'm not in either camp. I'll watch anything that's well constructed, sort of thing. So,
yeah. I mean, because we both like.
That's valid, though.
The Bad Batch, right? And there's barely any of that stuff in there.
But there is, there's Gunji.
I mean,
and there's, there's questions of the Force and stuff like that.
Sure.
But
I mean, but like those are like, one episode, 2-3 episodes, basically.
Well,
in
it's
the
much
span
closer.
of 3
It's
seasons.
much closer in the timeline to Revenge of the Sith, which is, I mean, the Jedi are open and hugely active up until that moment in time, at which point they go deeply into hiding. And so it's like, your point, Darren, there's stuff going on that's being told in this same general time period between films where there is addressing why the Jedi aren't as apparent. And, there's been plenty of material that talks about, like any regime, the Empire would change the curricula so that there would, be no there would be no revisiting of history. The books would be rewritten. So
yeah,
it makes sense.
No, totally.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question, Darren, and I think that does make for one of the most interesting parts of the series in that sense of like truly seeing how much the Jedi have become, kind of a myth, a legend. And almost forgotten because of the work of the Empire, and so, I mean, as any series of television, 12 episodes as big as these are, we could talk for hours, but I think I'm really interested, to see where we end up with the ratings. And so, Darren, as the guest, we're so excited that you were here. Where do you land then, knowing that you do not give half stars? Where do you land?
Everyone knows that.
Yes,
is this a scale of 5?
But,
I forgot we're rating this, but
5. We'll do 5.
I mean, I give it a 5 for what it did, for what it accomplished, for, I want to rewatch it. It has some of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars. And I'm not just saying that because K2's looking over my shoulder like he's really mad. But, no, is it perfect? No. Can I still give it a 5 if it's not perfect? Yes, because I enjoy it. I will rewatch it. It expanded the universe in an amazing way. And I hope we get more, not more as in Andor season 3, but more as in more flavors of Star Wars. Because I think Star Wars can only be greater if we get different flavors of things coming out. Wacky stuff, fun stuff, serious stuff, droid stuff, animated stuff, all of it. It's a great time to be a Star Wars fan.
Yeah. What about you, John?
I mean, the last 6 episodes are basically the season for me. So I can't see myself revisiting the first 6 episodes really. They just never clicked for me. And be that as it may, the back 6 were, they had bits, they had interest. There were specific moments that I really enjoyed that I thought were good and poignant and worked very well. So basically, since I'm splitting it halvesies that way, out of 5, I'll give it a 2.5 because there's a half. No, Darren, I give half stars. I don't care what you say.
Darren is shaking his head.
Well, that's just because Darren's really, really hardcore about this half star nonsense, but I'm not. I'll give it 2.75 stars or 2.23 stars if I want to, Darren.
K2's judging
my
you,
star
John, as a look of judgment right there.
K2 can judge me all that he wants to. I don't care. But so since I'm splitting it halvesies, I'm going 2.5, which is half of 5.
Yeah. I like what you said, Darren, and I really resonate with it, which is you mentioned how you want more Star Wars flavors, right? And I resonate with that as well. I don't want all of my Star Wars to be Andor. And to me, John, you and I have talked about this many times on the 602 Club and on Aggressive Negotiations. But one of the things that I think the Clone Wars really did for all Star Wars fans is to prepare us to be able to see all different flavors of Star Wars in many different types of genres. And Andor is one of those, right? We both also really enjoyed Skeleton Crew. Totally different flavor, right? And so I don't need all Star Wars to be in this vein. I don't think it needs to be. But for me, Andor seasons 1 and 2 together, I would consider an absolute masterpiece. Season 2 specifically, I think, like you, Darren, I have some quibbles with this season, especially with that first arc. But beyond that, in those quibbles, the rest of the stuff completely carries me. And this is an absolute 100% stone cold masterpiece of Star Wars storytelling. And I love it. And I can't, I've watched it twice now. And in all honesty, I'll rewatch Andor, I think, many times. I love it. And I'll be really interested now, possibly to maybe revisit Rogue One and talk about it maybe in light of Andor at some point, because I think that the show now recontextualizes, obviously, in the best way, that movie. And so, but we're so glad that you joined us here. And so, Darren, let everybody know where they can catch up with you and see your incredible work on droids like K2SO and L3 and your cosplaying. And I mean, you're just a builder extraordinaire. So where can people find you?
Oh, thanks, Matt. Yeah, they can find me at drsci-fi.com. I have links to my socials as well as pictures, blogs. I probably need to get back to updating my mission list. It's probably a couple of years out of date. But yeah, I post a lot about droid creations and events that I'm going to. A lot of fun playing in the Star Wars playground. And it's definitely true that if you build it, you get to do cool stuff.
And John, where can everybody find you?
Well, you can find me as Kessel Junkie out there on the social networks of your choice if you wish. And you can, of course, find me over on the Nerd Party Network, co-hosting a show with Darren called House Lights, where I get to expose him to movies he's never seen before and get his reaction to different horror flicks, his delicate self and how he processes them, and threaten to burn Tristan's car on occasion because he deserves it. And you can find me, of course, on Aggressive Negotiations on the Nerd Party, which is a Star Wars podcast that I co-host with you, Matt.
Well, I got to say, people should listen to House Lights, because listening to you guys talk about movies and, the threats that go back and forth are phenomenal. It's a good thing that you guys all live thousands of miles away from each other, but it's a delightful show, so everybody should check that out. You can find me all over social media under the name Matt Rushing 02. Of course, here on the network, out of TFM, outside of the 602 Club. I've got tons of shows going on with Chris Jones as we're talking about Star Trek. And so please do check all of that out. But thank you so much for joining us. And John, I feel like I hear some chimes of the Jedi Temple. Maybe it's time for meditation. I don't know, but I think it's time to close these negotiations.
Indeed. These negotiations are closed, and y'all come back now, you hear?
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.